You're looking forward to Bridgerton, right? A new season has come out of that.
I have not seen this.
I know, I'm kidding.
No, I've not seen this.
Dearest gentle reader.
Oh.
That is not your MO, Dennis.
I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
And welcome back to another edition of the Politics Unplugged podcast edition. Today, I'm happy to be joined by Wayne Schutsky from KJZZ. Can we still call it KJazz?
Sometimes I do, but I get yelled at.
Why? I just, forever, it'll be KJazz to me, man.
We just don't really play that much jazz anymore.
With Brody and Goldstein and the old crew.
Well, Brody's still there.
Brody's still there, still doing a great job. But to me, it's always going to be KJazz. But I want to be correct. KJZZ, your local NPR news.
KJZZ News.
KJZZ News. Hey, thanks a lot for joining us here, man. Let's big topic of discussion this week. And you've written a story about this, is guns and protests.
That's right.
What started you down on that story?
Well, I just thought, what a good thing to bring up out of the blue. No, after the shooting of Alex Preddy, I was actually talking to some family members, and anyone who's lived in Arizona for a long time knows the gun culture in this state, as Kris Mayes pointed out. And it crosses political lines. It's not just Republicans who have guns out here. It's independents, it's libertarians, it's Democrats. It's we saw, I think, like far left groups at the Capitol a few years ago protesting Donald Trump with assault rifles. I think Stephen Lemon documented them.
Oh yeah.
So we see it across political lines. And I was talking with some family members, and they saw what happened in Minneapolis, and they were like, "What's going to happen when they come here?" I think the gun culture here versus Minnesota, it's a little bit different. And I was like, that's a good question. So I decided to go and ask some politicians who typically defend Second Amendment rights what they thought would happen.
So before we started this, you were telling me you went looking for some politicians. You didn't find many, but you found a couple very prominent politicians down at the Capitol. Who'd you talk to?
Yeah, I just decided to go down to the floor of the legislature when they are normally meeting, and it just happened the day I was on. A lot of them kind of scooted before the meeting was over. It didn't have to do with the question because they didn't know it was coming. But I did get House Speaker Steve Montenegro and Senate President Warren Peterson, so essentially the top Republicans down at the legislature. And Montenegro kind of gave me a very brief, we're going to continue to defend constitutional rights, including the Second Amendment. Nice to see you. And he scooted.
Can you get me out of here now, please?
The Senate president was gracious enough to stand and take all the questions I had for him. And he gave a very similar response initially, that obviously Arizonans do have the right to carry firearms during a protest if they're otherwise allowed to carry. And that, they're going to continue to defend those rights. However, I asked him, do you agree with the president, who hasn't said they can't carry at a protest, but that they shouldn't? And he kind of shifted the blame onto Alex Preddy for being shot because he brought a gun.
And Alex Preddy, just real quick, the ICU, 37-year-old ICU nurse in Minneapolis who was shot and killed by ICE agents at a protest.
Yeah, and in the wake of that, now the White House has started walking back some of these comments, but they essentially tried to justify the shooting by pointing out that he had a gun on him. The first image we saw come out of that was Homeland Security posting a photo of the gun, placed on a car seat. So essentially saying, and then they said he was coming here to kill cops is essentially what they said. And like I said, they've walked that back because there's really no evidence of that. So that got me thinking, the ardent Second Amendment supporters, what do they think about that? And Peterson told me he agreed with the president that people shouldn't bring weapons to protest, that it's probably not the smartest thing or something to that effect is what he said.
That's amazing. You've been down there for a while now, too. I mean, for my entire career, all I've ever heard from Republicans is, Second Amendment, guns. You can take these guns everywhere. And in the bills, the amount of bills they've expanded they've tried to bring guns onto, K-12 schools and other places. There's a new bill again this year to try to get guns back into bars. It's just surprising.
Yeah, I mean, I think Peterson himself a few years back sponsored one of those bills to allow people to carry loaded firearms into parking lots.
I mean, as far as like absolutionists, I mean, these people were absolute Second Amendment gun rights people. Like, you have a right to this, and you should be able to carry it anywhere.
Yeah, and so and any time or Democrats try and introduce something to rein in firearms in the wake of any of these terrible shootings we've seen in recent years, it's always opposed in the name of the Second Amendment, and that's kind of what spurred me onto this story. So now we're seeing, at least from Peterson and a few other Republicans, some equivocation on that.
Yeah, and it wasn't that long ago. It's a few years ago. It might have been during the first Trump administration or something. There was a protest down at the Capitol, and I ended up doing a live shot. And there was a man with an AR-15 behind me the entire time I was doing my live shot.
Yeah,
where was Peterson then?
as Capitol reporters, it's something we see quite frequently.
All the time.
I think at one of the No Kings protests recently that was at the Capitol, someone pointed a gun at, a counter-protester pointed a gun at a protester, and I don't think they were charged with anything in that case. So, yeah, we have a gun culture here in Arizona, and it's just interesting to see how modern politics are going to impact that. Surprisingly, I spoke with some Democrats, and they were actually more unequivocal in their support for. And I actually posed that because they held a press.
It's more proof that we're in the upside down, right?
Yeah, they held a press conference supporting, Attorney General Kris Mayes, who gotten some hot water for the comments she made.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah. So we'll get into that, but. Afterwards, I approached the Senate Minority Leader, Priya Sundaresh, and I was like, did you ever think you'd be in this position where you guys are the ones defending And she was like, we're in a weird spot, but we recognize, the Bill of Rights. We recognize what rights Americans have, and we're going to defend them. And Brian Fernandez, another Democratic senator, went further, and he was like, I'm a gun owner. And he's like, and he pointed out, he said, when protesters came here protesting the election with guns, when protesters came here protesting COVID mandates with guns. We were told they were defending liberty. What changed?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, this is the same party who, just not too long ago, torpedoed former Governor Doug Ducey's red flag law bill. His proposal to get red flag laws passed in Arizona. I mean, it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, which is kind of seen as kind of the most kind of baseline approach to gun regulation that has passed in certain, with Republican support.
If you're deemed to be mentally unsound or have a history of domestic violence or things like this, that keeps guns out of those hands. And that got torpedoed down there by this Republican Party, and now they're saying, well, you shouldn't bring guns to a protest. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, you point as a Capitol reporter, you see guns down there all the time.
Yeah,
and in fact, you can take your gun to the House or the Senate. I mean, there's a lockbox for it. Just hand it to them. They'll put it in a lockbox, and you go retrieve it when you get back.
Yeah, and that's part of state law. I also talked to the Arizona Citizens Defense League. That's the one. They're very pro-gun rights group. They're the Second Amendment absolutists.
Yes, they are.
And one would think typically align with Republicans because of the defense of the Second Amendment. But their spokesman told me he basically said I think his exact words were the president's comments are irrelevant. You don't get your rights from the president.
Those are my guys. Those are my boys.
You get your rights from the Constitution.
There we are. At least they're being consistent. I would expect nothing less from those guys.
And it's worth pointing out that there are some Republicans nationally who have also stayed consistent in their position.
Including the NRA now.
And the NRA, they first blamed Democrats for causing the whole situation, but then did say that this interpretation coming from the Trump administration is incorrect. But you are seeing some Republican senators and things like that pushing back. And one of the first real breaks we've seen where they're willing to do that, which is notable, and just saying that, no, this is incorrect. People have the right to bear arms, and again, without evidence that he was ever brandished that weapon with an attempt to shoot it up.
I was stunned when, I started seeing Republicans start supporting tariffs and, going against free trade and stuff like that. I thought, this is kind of mind-blowing. I never would have thought I'd hear this kind of talk about guns coming from Republicans.
No, because tariffs and fiscal policy, all that kind of stuff is really esoteric and hard to get the public. But the public watching those videos, it's really easy to see what happened there. And whether you're someone who agreed with Pretty's politics or someone who just is an ardent Second Amendment supporter, you could see both of those people just in the public coming out on the same side on that issue. And I think that's what some of those Republican senators are seeing, is that there's no explaining your way out of this. as the administration tried to at first, because there's just no evidence to back up what they were claiming.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the big fight between Kris Mayes, the Attorney General, and Governor Katie Hobbs. This all started over some comments that Mayes made that basically talking about warning about if ICE comes here, it's like, this Arizona has a strong gun culture, have a lot of laws here, including a stand your ground law, which gives people the power to defend their home with a firearm.
Yeah, and then that law does, I think, carve out law enforcement.
Sure.
But I think what Mayes was saying is that what we've seen with ICE is masks and all these things, and not identifying themselves, not providing any proof outside of a flak jacket that anyone could buy on Amazon.
And haven't we seen or read some reports out there that people have dressed up as federal agents before?
Well, the lawmaker in Minnesota who we saw assassinated was killed by a man impersonating law enforcement. So I think that's what she was pointing out, is that they weren't providing any clear proof that they are law enforcement. So that could cause the confusion where a person doesn't know that they are law enforcement and believes they are someone breaking into their home and shoot them. Now, she said it in a way that maybe was a little inartful and opened her up to attacks from Republicans who said she was providing like a game plan essentially to target law enforcement. We've seen law enforcement groups come out with that same criticism. And then, as you mentioned, the governor came out and essentially told her, if you're explaining, you're losing, and said, the fact that she's had to re-explain herself so many times proves that maybe she didn't say it the right way and she should just retract the comments. I think Mayes stands behind the message of what she was saying. And what Sundaration, the Senate Minority Leader, told me is that the Preddy shooting actually proved that she was right, except it was just, this is me now editorializing, in reverse. It wasn't the ICE agent who got shot. It was the person legally carrying a firearm who got shot. And I think, at least in terms of protests out here, that's what we're more likely to see.
It's fascinating to see, because this is, once again, you're starting to see this governor separate herself more and more from Democrats. Now, with the public and a lot of the other politics aside, I'd say, in an election year, everything is like a political Rorschach test, right? Where you stand on with Hobbs or Mayes, or the Senate Republicans who are now calling for Mayes to step down and resign for her comments. I mean, that's the politics of it. You're going to see what you want to see there. But with this governor, I'm thinking there's more of a political calculation of why she's doing this, right? This probably benefits her, because she only won by 17,000 votes a few years ago. She's looking for a second term, and she wants to appeal to those moderates and those independents, those moderate Republicans and independents, right?
Exactly right. We saw two different campaign strategies last time from Mayes and Hobbs. Hobbs did exactly what you said, where she played down the middle. She said, I'm the moderate choice. Like, choose me. I'm not some democratic socialist. I'm a Democrat. I like social services. I like those type of things, but I'm also going to do some stuff on the border, and I support law enforcement, all these things, and it was a successful strategy. Mayes really went in, like she told us she was going to do the fake electors case. She told us, she went hard and said, no, this is who I am. Trump was the reason she became a Democrat, and she was going to campaign on those type of things, and she's largely made good on that. So two separate campaign strategies, both ended up working. Mayes by maybe the closest margin in a statewide race in modern history.
Yeah, it was the
280 70 something votes, something like that.
Under
300.
Under 300
I think
votes,
is how I usually refer to it in the story, because numbers, right? But yeah, so you see these two diametrically opposed campaign strategies, and it looks like that's the way they're going to go now. I think the governor has the added complication that she has to govern the state as well, where she's working with Republicans on a daily basis, or should be, to pass a budget and things like that. She also can't anger the Trump administration, because we're relying on all sorts of federal funds that they kind of hold the purse strings on.
That's interesting. Is there any fallout? Like, when you start looking at November, does somebody, in this fight, is this going to have any political baggage that carries through? Because we know, Mayes is up for, again, won by less than 300 votes, a narrower margin than Katie Hobbs. They are taking two different paths again this time. Do you think this ends up costing Mayes?
With the caveat that we're so far out from the election that people might not even remember this by the time we get there.
I'm thinking there'll be a few ads.
There will be ads. No, I don't think the politicians and the people who get paid to make the ads are going to forget it, and they're going to blast people with it. But it's just in politics, especially today, like there's going to be 18 other things, maybe more, by the time we get there that are going to try and blow up this race one way or the other. So that being said, I think, it's something that they are going to continue blasting. I think, Mays has actually had a pretty decent relationship, I think, working with law enforcement, being the attorney general over the course of her tenure, because a lot of her focus, the headline stuff is political, but a lot of her focus has been like cracking down on consumer fraud issues and things like that. So I think that's where it could potentially hurt her, where she's not getting it's hard for a Democrat AG to get the support of police groups in elections anyway. She's probably not going to get them.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to me because, Mays is not a lefty.
No, she used to be a Republican.
She used to be a Republican, and now she is kind of emerged as this face of the Democratic resistance to Trump. And Hobbs is flanking Mays on the right, and it's fascinating to see this play out right now.
Yeah, it's just indicative of the larger, I think, political reality in Arizona. Right, everyone calls us a purple state, and I always kind of cringe at that. And I'm like, no, we're not really a purple state. If you look at Democrat, like our registrations, we were getting there, but Republicans since that time have really increased their advantage. It's just we're a state with a very specific culture. Again, we talked about gun culture. We won't vote for super outlandish Republicans, and given an option on the other side, the Democrat has the chance. But what you're seeing here is Democrats trying to scramble with that reality. Everyone has a different kind of approach to how to make that argument that I'm the reasonable choice.
Yeah, and being a Democrat in Arizona has always been very different than being a Democrat in Massachusetts for obvious reasons. And again, like I think most of the Capitol reporters, the people I see down at the Capitol covering the governor and like that probably agree with that statement. I know I do. I know I cringe every time it's just Arizona's referred as a purple state. It's like, no, we're a red state that happens to have Democrats at the top positions right now for reasons. And those reasons are candidates matter, and voters out here, again, do not like those outlandish characters or candidates. I don't think they like anybody on the fringes of the left or the right. And what we've seen as Democrats who've won these statewide offices, 2 Senate races, governor's race, tack and be in the middle and face somebody who is very far right, be it Carrie Lake or whoever else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the reasons our registration is increasing for Republicans so drastically, and this is just me speculating, is we do have a lot of in-migration from California. And who's leaving California to come here? It's not Democrats, it's Republicans. It's the Orange County Republicans and Northern California Republicans who are tired of living there because of the policies, and they want to come to a Republican state, so they're coming here. But then, like you said, candidates matter. So those Republicans may not be as far right as a lot of the Republicans we've got here. And so they're still going to look at the candidate, and they might vote for a Kim Yee for treasurer, but they're not going to vote for a Carrie Lake for governor.
Yeah, right. Because a typical California Republican, they think they're all Republican until they move out here. And then they're like, They're
the only ones who don't want anyone carrying guns.
I had a friend years ago move out to New York, kind of the opposite story here, and he was thought of himself a pretty progressive Democrat, right? And he moves out in New York, and then Bill de Blasio's on the ballot, and you get this text with message from him. He's like, "Man, I'm worried because I can't vote for a freaking socialist, man. I just can't do it."
Now he's a Cuomo Republican.
Yeah, something. It's like it's funny how the definitions shift and change depending on where you're at. But also, speaking of politics, and I'm sure politics played no part of this, but the Senate did vote on a measure calling for her resignation. I know it was a Kavanaugh thing, but the president of the Senate, he's kind of gunning for her job, isn't he?
Yeah, Peterson, who I spoke to for the protests and Second Amendment story, is running for Attorney General, which is also notable. So, I'm sure politics played no role in it. It was just based on their ethics and what they believe. But I'm sure that will have just about as much effect as if I called Kris Mayes and said I think you should resign. Like it's not going to go anywhere. It has no effect.
Well, let's wrap on this real quick. Because as an old City Hall reporter where I started, I have nothing but empathy for you. You spent about a bajillion hours in a meeting this week, right, for light rail?
Yeah, I spent about half of the hours that it actually went on there, and then I watched the rest because I have kids. But yes, it was about a 10-hour meeting over the next light rail connection that was supposed to go around the Capitol and over to the west side down I-10. Republican lawmakers, again, rearing their heads. They do not like that. They've hated light rail for years. They never wanted anywhere near the Capitol. They sent a few threatening letters, and
they don't want the plebes coming by.
And it spooked enough of the city council to essentially, it's not officially canceled, like it's still part of the plan that could happen in 30 years or something, but they essentially canceled it. It was supposed to be the next line, and they axed that. Instead, they sped up a separate line to the West Valley that goes nowhere near the Capitol by about 4 years. But it's worth noting that line was going to happen anyway. The folks who supported it kind of pitched it as like, oh no, we found an alternative. But what actually happened is the west side was supposed to have two lines. It was supposed to be the I-10 line first, and then a few years later you get this other line going down Indian School, and now you have a nice loop. So now they've really only got one guaranteed, and I put guaranteed like in quotes because like nothing with this plan is guaranteed.
Explain, maybe you can explain for folks who still don't get, because I get asked this all the time. I don't know how about you, but like anytime this issue comes up, people ask like, man, why do Republicans hate light rail so much?
Yeah, my father-in-law, who is a Republican, actually asked me this. They were watching my
kids.
And
it's a fair question because
they were watching my kids.
They hate themselves some light rail, man.
Yeah, they were watching my kids, and he's like, where were you? And I explained it to him, and he's like, why do they hate light rail? He's like, I've been to Europe, and I love public transportation. They hate it for two reasons. Number one, they claim it's a boondoggle because it doesn't turn a profit. It costs billions of dollars to build, and then it isn't profitable like streets. Streets are so profitable. But the other issue is they just don't like it.
They just don't, and they think it's a bunch of like hobos just like
that's an argument
riding around in the light rail all day. Yeah.
There's a reason, former Scottsdale City Hall reporter, that Scottsdale has no light rail because the citizens rebelled the moment it was mentioned as a footnote, as a possibility in 15 years in a esoteric city planning document. So they think that it's drug addicts and hobos and all that stuff. And actually, when I published my story, I got a few comments on Twitter to that effect from random people.
Just a bunch of hobos getting free air conditioning in the summer.
And I was like, I ride it to Diamondbacks game with my kids. I've never had an issue. So, but neither here nor there. So it's kind of those two things. And they were kind of willing to grin and bear it as the system passed through different cities that weren't really their districts. But once it was going to go next to the Capitol, I think they kind of viewed that as like an insult.
This is getting too close.
I think at one point, the former speaker was like, to have to walk over the light rail lines to get there. And then
the horror of walking across the
Senator
line.
J.D. Mesnard from Chandler, who's also a big opponent, told me that we need to have more reverence for our Capitol. So to see it torn up would just be really sad to him.
Oh, come on.
He did acknowledge after that, as a caveat, that we do have one of the ugliest capitals.
I was just gonna say, has he taken a look at the two chambers?
But he said it's still our capital, and we still need to have reverence for it. But I'm glad he at least acknowledged that, because unfortunately, yes, we do not have one of the grander capitals.
Yeah, because you've been down there long enough. You see the people who from all over the country, they just want to see state capitals. You've probably even talked to them. I have over the years, and they are, without a doubt, always unimpressed.
Yeah, well, we've got like this utilitarian, executive tower where the governor works that looks straight out of a Judge Dredd reboot, and then it's like fused to our old Capitol, which is actually kind of nice in like that old timey classic way. And then you've just got like, I don't know, as someone who's covered a lot of government contracts, they hired architects on the cheap for the Senate and the House.
I always think of was it the Kurt Vonnegut book in the phrase in there, the complicated futility of ignorance. Whenever I walk through the old Capitol to the executive tower, because the whole idea of a small state government building was that they wanted to keep government small, and it's just a physical representation of how that just is not going to happen. What a frugal effort that is, because you go through the 1919 edition, and then the 1920 edition, and then they just said, screw it. You finally get to the 1970 executive tower, and it's like, you're not gonna slow down to
and
the
to
growth
bring it
of
all
government.
back to City Hall. It's just like a example of bad planning.
Yeah,
because it just looks like a bunch of bad ideas that were glommed together over the years, which essentially is what it is.
Yeah.
And then every new speaker gets to like go tear out the carpet and put a different, worse color in. But like,
well, in the two chambers, I mean, it's just like they look like they were like prefab. They were all prefabbed.
They look like those churches out in rural Arizona where they built them out of like metal siding.
I say bring back the old Frank Lloyd Wright design.
hey, anything would be better. Honestly, I did a little meeting with other public radio reporters at NPR over the summer, and like we were supposed to say a fact about our capital, and my fact was I think ours is probably the ugliest in the country.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think most of the rankings I see, there's like us and one of the Dakotas.
Yeah. Not a good list to be.
No.
It's kind of like when we're ranked near. It's like us in Mississippi for education funding. Like it's not a list you want to be at the bottom of.
Oh, Wayne, thanks for stopping by here, man. I think we're wrapping up on time. We got to get moving on.
Yeah.
Pop culture question.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. What's what do you listen to after a 10-hour committee hearing on light rail? How do you unwind? Do you listen to something to chill out, or after something like that, do you listen to something harder?
So after that one specifically, I just like went to bed because it was like midnight and I had to go into work in the morning. But I will say after the Arizona Republican Party meeting that lasted nearly as long.
We didn't even get to that.
Yeah, that I covered over the weekend. I just listened to music that I listened to in high school. That's what I tell people. So it was like a lot of Menzingers and like pop punk, emo, crossover type of stuff. So a mixture of hard and soft, I guess.
Right. Love the Menzingers, man. All right, thanks, Wayne. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And welcome back to the second half of the Politics Unplugged podcast. Again, want to thank Wayne Schutsky from KJZZ from stopping by here. But now I am pleased to announce that I am joined by one of our very best news people here at the Arizona family, Nicole Kris. You anchor everything from
5, 6, 9, 10. Yeah. I've got your back, Dennis. Yeah.
Thought I'd bring you on here. We had Jared Dillingham on a few months ago. We were just talking about the state of news and the business, trying to pull back the curtain a little bit for people who may be curious and stuff like that. And one of the things I want to start out with was a compliment with you, and particularly Jared. I mean, we've worked with. I mean, we all know some of the anchors here that take more of a passive interest in the rundowns.
Yeah.
Is that a diplomatic way?
That's a fair way to put it.
A fair way to put it. I mean, you and Jared are very engaged. You're very active. You are very involved in the rundowns and the stories and how they're presented and written and stuff like that. So I definitely wanted to start off with a compliment on that and compliment you on that, and why I thought it'd be interesting just bring you on, talk about some of the stuff where you have to deal with and how you think about just news, and particularly in this environment where everything's polarized.
Sure. And
every time you present both sides, you get pushback from someone's like, "Oh, they're both sides in it again." Like it's a negative thing, And I, in certain cases, I understand where people are coming from, but like just because you're presenting both sides doesn't mean you're both sides in it. I mean, every side, as my mom would always say, every story has another side, no matter how thin the pancake, right? So,
I like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's start there. I mean, what do you find the most challenging now in your job from when you started? Because, I know over my career, like, wow, it's kind of unrecognizable in certain areas and what we do. But, where are you at?
I find that it's going to get increasingly more difficult to do our job with AI and all the emerging noise on social media. So I feel like everybody's got an opinion and they're really dug into their opinions. So on social media, it's just amplified and it's just so much rhetoric that it's just so much noise. People already have their opinions. They're dug into it. So when they turn on the news, they already see it through a certain filter and a lens, and they think that we're presenting it through a certain filter and a lens. And there are certainly news programs because you have network news, you have alternative media, you have podcasts, you have all these different ways that people are seeking to inform themselves, get their information. And most of it's in this little black box that everyone carries around in their hand, right? But I feel like it just ups the ante to trigger people into passion. And sometimes that passion can be moving them to do something good. Sometimes it can just spiral into anger, and then that plays out into everything that we're seeing on our streets right now. So I just feel like even when we think we see something, you see a video comes out. And it used to be back in the day when we started doing news, it was like, there is voice authentication that can verify that this is the voice of so-and-so, or there's video proof of this. That doesn't really exist anymore. I was just doing an interview at the FBI the other day, and he said, is your news organization able to authenticate video? And I said, we're not. Maybe like CBS or CNN, our affiliates, will do that tier of authentication. But, you know, when we get something in hand, we look at it behind the scenes like, okay, what is the allegation? What's the story? Is there any police report that backs this up? Is there any video evidence? Is there what's the actual proof to this allegation? So we kind of have to buttress it with what we can do to responsibly support whatever allegation it may be. But then even then, sometimes that video evidence, we can't necessarily know that it's 100% true. It's difficult. It's going to be more challenging.
And it's getting worse.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost to the point now. You can still see some clues about AI-generated videos and images and stuff like that.
Sixth finger.
Yeah, there's some stuff like that you can see. And but some of it, too, is just a vibe. It's like you get a vibe.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know?
So I think I challenge people just, anytime that you feel the algorithm's getting to you. No. People don't have algorithm awareness, and I think that we see that anytime we see these swells in society where people are at like pitch perfect psychosis, like they're at each other's necks, and we're seeing that again right now. There have been certain points in our recent timeline that just get people fighting with their friends otherwise, who you wouldn't, against your neighbor. You think these people who disagree with you, how could they not see things my way? But it is an algorithm that's in this little box in your hand that's feeding you the same kind of content that silos your brain so much you can't see why anyone who has a brain would not agree with you.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, too, because a lot of times, again, a difference from when we started, people would come to us for the news, but a lot of time, people watching us, maybe they already have not just the news, they already have the opinion that they're going to have on that news and going to judge you or me by how we present it, right?
Yeah, because you think about when you see protests on the streets, what's in everybody's hand? That box again, and it's recording. So everybody has a different angle of what they're seeing. They're sharing that with the world, and then that's shared on social media. So by the time it gets to news time, many times people have already seen that clip. How many different times, how many different angles, and certainly have formed an opinion. So it is so important for us to not only make sure we're giving proper attribution for everything that's happening, but then also refreshing before last-minute newscasts, because how many times have things changed last minute? I mean, we've seen just with this administration, and it's tough because it's like you have strong opinions that come out of this administration, and someone can say one thing and then the next day or hours later there can be a contradictory statement. So we have to make sure that we're looking at the big picture of things, and that's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. In covering this administration too, I'd love your thoughts on this, because I love that. From certain people, like maybe on the right, you hear a lot from, like, it's the news media agenda. They've never been in a newsroom. They don't understand the arguments we have. You know what I mean? It's just like, well, we're always striving to be, to depict the most accurate information that we can at that time.
Right.
And the most accurate facts as we gather them at that time. What do you see? Because you have an interesting, because you can come in cold, in the middle of the day and start looking at the rundown, and you always have like, well, have we thought about this? Do we need to include that? I mean, what do you see on a daily basis, particularly when it comes to this administration?
I mean, just asking questions of, have we figured this out? Or, somebody saying this, have we asked this extra question? So I think sometimes if we get a news release or an allegation or something along those lines, it's like, see it, say it, we're attributing it to that person, but we're not necessarily asking the smartest follow-up questions. So I think it's on us to make sure that we're asking those smarter follow-up questions, and that as news consumers and as good humans, that we're also kind of taking that look just stepping back for a second and saying, what doesn't make sense here?
Mm-hmm.
And what can we do? Like, how can we ask those questions? There's just been so much that is that has drawn the line in the sand for so many people about, when we talk about things like if there's ever a fatal law enforcement shooting, then, locally that's an automatic internal affairs investigation that sparks that. But then when you have like Kristi Noem saying, well, we're not going to investigate that shooting and we're going to instead look at how the protesters may have been radicalized and had been taunting, terrorizing, and following these ICE agents for hours and getting in their faces and this, that, and the other. It's difficult because it's not following standard protocol that had been in place. Like, what's the SOP? What's the standard operating procedure? And so taking a look at those types of things, like, is there a standard protocol to just say, regardless of what opinions there might be in any administration, be it local, be it federal or otherwise, shouldn't there just as a standard operating procedure be some sort of basis of investigation? And now locally, there have been so many task force, like there's the East Valley Critical Incident Task Force, there's the West Valley. So if Glendale has a shooting, then Peoria is going to investigate. If Mesa has a shooting, then Tempe is going to investigate it. And so they kind of like recognize that there is a distrust, but they also recognize the importance of transparency, that one, it should be investigated. And if that officer or whoever in law enforcement pulled a trigger is in the clear or was cleared by following protocol, whether it was a bad shoot or not, or whether it's a criminal shoot or not, is a whole other conversation. But were they following procedures? Were they following protocols? Are they cleared by policy and procedure? But then also to have that extra layer of like another organization independent of our own is going to do an investigation.
But one thing you rarely see, or I haven't seen that, is police chief come out immediately after a shooting and start blaming whoever was shot.
Yeah.
And we saw that with this federal administration, which to me is what struck me the most, was like, this is a 180 from my old days as a cop reporter, night cop reporter way back in the day. It's like, you never heard that from, and I was like just kind of stunned with that fact alone.
And I think there has to be, both sides have to tune down the rhetoric. You have people in high positions of power who we expect more of, and they are going beyond and giving their personal opinion on things that for us, we've always taken as fact, statement of fact. You have an official who's giving a statement of fact, but when it's an opinion, that's what's different. So it made the news the other day about how there was the group of activists who stormed a church, and now there's been more arrests in that case in Minneapolis. And when they released a photograph of a woman coming out who's BLM protester, and the White House posted a picture of her face that had an AI alteration to make it look like she was crying, and they said, well, that's a meme of the arrest. And when you have an altered photograph that's coming from an official White House website, on the same note, you have official networks who are airing altered photographs of Alex Preddy. This is a messy time that we're in. You have both sides altering photographs, both sides sharing highly charged opinions. How are we expecting things to play out peacefully on the streets?
Well,
it's not good.
And there's a difference between opinion and fact. And a lot of time, what I worry about and what I see is a lot of people are getting their news through opinion. That before they know even what the facts of the case are, there's somebody they're watching on social media that's screaming about this person's right or wrong before they even get the information anymore. It used to be, if I can get off my lawn, horse. It used to be you went and read the facts in the newspaper, and then you'd read the editorial page.
Yeah.
And you'd see different opinions on that. It's just like it's a role reversal now.
Yeah, and I don't know what's going to change that. I think it has to be us making a concerted effort to remove ourselves from that spiral because it is so easy to get sucked into it and just keep these videos autoplay, right?
Yeah.
One after the other. Then soon enough, 40 minutes later, you've gone down this complete rabbit hole of craziness, and you're not seeking out opinion from smart people who disagree with you. I think that's important to go back to the original source of things. If you're hearing so-and-so is a racist or so-and-so is this or that, go back to original sources and figure out what context, whatever soundbite you heard clipped and was used and put together in a fancy, flashy reel, go back to the original sources, challenge yourself to do that before just, reposting or sharing that reel.
Yeah, like this week, and I don't necessarily mean to discuss the ins and outs of this, but, I'm sure one of those stories where people were already getting a head full of opinion before they knew what was going on was probably what Kris Mays had to say about ICE raids and stuff like that. My take from that whole thing was like she's probably guilty at worst as just being inartful of what she was trying to say.
She backpedaled quite a bit, and she has reiterated, I don't want anyone to shoot law enforcement. But
you throw this in a political lens.
There was some kind of verbiage, and I don't want to misspeak by any means, but there was some sort of verbiage along the lines of this could be a standard for a defense for stand your ground. That is not the greatest thing to be coming from the highest attorney in our state.
It may not be inaccurate, but you maybe don't say that. You know what I mean?
Wow.
That's why I'm saying like inartful on that.
Yeah.
And it was immediate, this goes out. And I'm sure a lot of people, again, got a head full, just a lot of opinion about this before they even saw the video.
Yeah, go back and listen to the full context of how things were played out. But I think it was you who pointed out on Monday when we got the alert from the U.S. Attorney's Office, you said, Arizona, what's happening today is not Minnesota. Phoenix is not Minneapolis. And I think that was a good pause for people. I will tell you, like, candidly, when that...
Oh, you're talking about the HSI raids?
Yes.
And
the HSI raids and more than a dozen sports bars in and around the valley. And
yeah, because everything has become ICE now. If you're a federal agent, this is your ICE.
Okay. And so the thing also that gave me pause is we get this alert into our newsroom that, and it came from U.S. Attorney's Office in Arizona saying that they're serving search warrants simultaneously at more than a dozen of these sports bars who are accused of federal felony criminal investigation. They didn't give us a lot of details on it, so we knew the locations. It was Zip Sports Bars. So we sent a chopper out to it, and I just had this pause, like, we can't not report it because it is news. I'm sure that they're giving it to us, this release, as context for you're going to get calls that there's ICE raids, and we want you to understand a little bit more that it is an HSI investigation that is a long-term. We understand it was a year-long investigation that came off of a tip that illegal activity was happening, that there were employees using fake socials, fake names for employment, and that the employers were knowingly hiring undocumented immigrants. So us just even putting out that HSI is serving warrants at 15 locations, we send a chopper to one. The aerials show an empty parking lot, 2 agents. The lot is cordoned off for their safety.
Yep.
Nobody's there. By the 4th, the 5th, the 6th location, there's a crowd. So I'm like, how much is cause and effect of us publicizing that this is happening, then alerting? And I'm not, naive to think that there aren't, we've seen and we've interviewed people who are on these protocol hot lists that are like anti-ICE activists who, will send out text message blitz to say, go to this location, ICE is there, blah, blah, blah. And there's been misinformation before, like Steve Gallardo was out in a neighborhood in Peoria yelling, this is not great, ICE is in our neighborhoods, and they don't even give us a heads up. It turns out it was a drug warrant that they were there for. But it amped up this fear, psychosis, and violent activity that somebody was injured in the streets there. A sergeant, I believe, was injured in the streets there. But this was very different. But it did just give me like, we have to report it. And it kind of goes back to even when the BLM protests were happening as well. And people would message us in the newsroom like, you covering it is part of the problem. It's still news. It's still news, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're blocking intersections. They're impeding traffic. It is a safety, threat, hazard. Our police are deploying there. We can't ignore these things. I don't know. That did give me pause, though.
Yeah. Let's wrap with this then, because you're also a human being too. Besides being an anchor, you have a family and kids and all that.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, I'll give you that. You're a real person.
good God.
Is this something you worry about with your family? Like, like the news, the algorithms, and how you
Of
get
course.
the news, and like, 'cause,
Of course.
I don't have kids that I know about. I have to throw that dad joke in.
Oh my gosh.
But I don't have kids, but I frequently think like, man, if I had kids now, man, I'd be scared to death. I don't know if I'd let them near a phone.
It's moot for me because they're high schoolers now,
Yeah.
and I'm like, wow. I do worry about that a lot, and I always try to tell my son when I see him on the couch, and I go, get out of zombie mode. You're just brain melting. Get up. Do something. But I do think that this little box has like impeded evolution. It has caused the devolution of humanity in many ways because these algorithms have found a way to just, brain suck your time, redirect whatever, intentions you may have had for the day. It's like, 2 hours later, 7 hours on a screen, or how many hours are you really like spending instead of human interaction?
It's replaced the third place. It used to be, work, home, maybe church or something like that. But now it's like work, home, and then you've got this virtual community where you're not really interacting with people in a real face-to-face kind of mode, but you're going to these virtual communities or paying attention to this stuff online all the time.
It's a digital binky.
Yeah.
So it's a pacifier, and I just think that it also creates jerks because you have people who will say things in this like false wall of anonymity. I'm going to snipe back at you and say something real shitty that I would never say to your face just because they have this like, oh, it's social media.
Yeah.
But would they ever say that to your face, Dennis? I mean,
no. And
not likely. I
also
think humans are better
Yeah.
than we purport ourselves to be,
we
or
also,
that it seems.
We also see the videos of people who do try to act like that in real life, and it normally doesn't end up well for them.
It's
either.
not good.
No, it worries me, and I think being aware of the algorithm is also important too, because it can go back and forth. For you, like you and me, like depends what we're working on. We're looking at stuff all the time. And man, these algorithms are like aggressive.
Yeah, and I will say too, like when you say you're human, there is a great amount of human compassion that I believe we all share, beyond what we think that this is the worst of worst times. We feel that way often, unfortunately. And it's like this adrenal fatigue of always in this heightened, angry mode. But I don't think that people are truly like that. I think you can have compassion for somebody who just wants to come here to make a better lives for their family.
Yeah.
I think you can have compassion for somebody who is a federal agent who is doing a job, has a warrant, has a sick kid at home, maybe has a wife who's cheating on him, maybe has other trauma going on in their lives. You never know what anyone is dealing with. But it's like, why don't you look that person who you disagree with and be like, that is also my neighbor and a human, and I can have compassion for whatever's going on in their lives.
All right. I think we'll have
we
to
hope.
Let's wrap on that. Let me ask you this, though. I always like to ask pop culture stuff of folks. Favorite TV show for the past year?
Ooh, for the past year.
Because for me, I'd have to say either Pluribus or Severance.
I didn't watch that. I didn't watch
you gotta
either
get on
of
that.
those ones.
You got to get on that.
But we're like crazy Netflix docuseries. We keep like,
okay.
And we're bingers. So, I mean, we will sit there and we're like, this is so bad. Oh my gosh. And then
What's
we're like,
the Kreitz family binging on now?
Okay, now that's over. What are we going to watch now? I mean, we just finished Landman. But I don't know that that's the best one that's out there. We like watching all of those docuseries. Gosh, what am I thinking of? I'm also like an avid Audible book listener. So I do podcasts on my way into work just to like fill my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do audible books, often romance, on my drive home.
Good
so
for
I
you.
can decompress, Dennis.
Good for you, man.
Yeah, I need to
you
eliminate the negativity from my world before I return to my safe space of my
junk
home.
food is sports talk radio.
Sports.
Talk
Okay,
radio.
I'm a switchable woman. No, I'm not into
I will
that.
I will turn on sports talk radio and just you know what I'm going to
Okay.
care about. I'm going to care about the Phoenix, the Arizona Cardinals coaching situation. You know,
Okay,
and like just
okay.
get away from all that stuff.
Yeah, you have to make a concerted, intentional effort to say, this is time to step back
Yeah.
from the craziness.
Yeah.
Right.
So Landman, huh? Big Landman fan.
I mean, that's a good one, but there are quite a few other ones. I'm trying to think. The Diplomat. If you haven't seen that,
I've not seen that. Not seen that.
very good.
Okay. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm again, Pluribus was great. I do enjoy right now. Fallout is a new show. It's kind of a sci-fi show.
Okay.
Based on a video game. It's really good. And
You're looking forward to Bridgerton, right? A new season has come out of that.
I have not seen this.
I know. I'm kidding.
I've not seen this.
Dearest gentle reader.
Oh.
That is not your MO, Dennis.
Is that on PBS?
No.
I do love classic theater.
Yeah, it's maybe not what you're thinking. Okay.
Well, all right. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time. It's great chatting with you.
Yeah, same.
Not on the floor with the cameras on us and stuff like that. So it was great getting away from that and chatting with you,
Same.
getting your thoughts on this. So, all right. And Jake, people don't know this. I should say this too. Jake Mowry's been filling in for Colin, he's on assignment. Let's say
Oh,
no,
okay.
not really. He had to take some time off. He'll be back next week.
right.
And thank you guys both for doing this week. And
Thank you.
We'll see y'all next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.